Thank you. So first up this week is Charlotte and Aaron and Bethan from the Community Approach Project. They are live out in the actual real wide world, not sitting at home. So just bear with them a little bit if there's problems with background noise and things like that. Over to you, Charlotte.
Hi everyone. Yeah, sorry about the background noise. We are actually in Tesco's in Camborne. So we're going to do a bit of a real live show and tell for a second. So I'm going to show you what we're doing, what we've been learning and how the last few days have been. Also give a wave to Chloe. Chloe, if you haven't met her before, is our local innovation officer in Camborne. So this is what we're doing in Camborne. So we have some information, and we're in Tesco's and we're asking people to stop by and offer their opinions and thoughts. So what I want to show you is what we're doing and why. So bear with me whilst I sit back down again. So we spent the week starting in Neath. We had a couple of days with Beth in there, and then Erin is now in Nelson in Lancashire, and I'm now in Cornwall. And the reason why we were in the towns is because we've been breaking down all of the information that we've heard, as you know, and we pulled it together into these activity sheets, as you can see here. So what we've got is in the middle are some of the challenges that we've heard people talk about really regularly. Around the edges are the strengths we've heard. And what we're asking people, as you can see, this is a completed one, is for people to stick a sticky dot on the things that they feel are the most important and are creating the biggest impact in the community. So the reason why we're doing this is because we need help working out where to prioritize our work. And to be community-led, we want to be led by the community. So that's what their decisions are helping us guide where we're going forward. So as you can hear, Chloe trying to pull someone down now to talk about Camborne. I'll move away. So it's been really interesting. First of all, to actually be able to go to the places that we've been learning about for the last 5 months and have never actually seen in real life before. I think we've been saying our first impressions were a lot different to what we expected. We've heard a lot about the crime levels in Neath. And it was actually, there was a wine bar and a tapas bar. It was quite exciting to see in real life. They've been doing a lot of work in the town centre regeneration. But if I just share my screen quickly, give me a second. Come on. Yeah. So for the last couple of days, we have been speaking to a huge number of people. Some faces that we've been speaking to before digitally and some new. The weather's been our friend, as you can see from my hair. There's 26-mile-an-hour winds at the moment, which has caused a new hairstyle for me. The first thing it's been, so there's two main things we've noticed through being in the town. The first is it's been a fantastic opportunity for us to build on our existing relationships. We've been working really hard to get to know people in the local town and connect with local change makers and people who live locally. It's been a fantastic opportunity for us to do so. We have had people like Don, who's the founder of the food bank in Camborne. We got to go and see him yesterday, and it levels up that relationship from one that was maybe quite transactional and passive that we've been trying to build. Something where we've got to know his volunteers. His volunteers are going to come to our ideation sessions. We also got to really understand his work and see his warehouse and see how he supports people locally. It's also been a really great opportunity to meet new faces. Obviously, because of the pandemic and because of the levels of digital exclusion locally, it's been really hard to reach everyone and also to find people to speak to us. Not everyone can give an hour of their time. Not everyone can join a show and tell. And also not everyone wants to talk to us that much, but we just want to hear their voices because they're the most important. And what being local has meant that we can have those short, quick interactions where they get to share their understanding. We get to build levels of trust and understand the experiences of people in Neath, Nelson and Camborne. And what I wanted to share with you is Brian, who we met earlier today, because he was a new face that I don't know how we would have found him unless we had been in Tesco's today. Brian is a self-described painter, decorator and all-round busybody. He told us that every day he is in Tesco's because this is his community. When he lost his wife Angie to breast cancer, it's actually the people at the checkouts and the people who work at Tesco's who supported him through it. And now he comes there every day to make new friends, and he loves meeting new people. And this Tesco's Tesco's is his community. And this is really important when we look at community spaces, because they're not always what you expect. And people find support in maybe unexpected places, but they're so important to tap into if we're really going to work to understand the community dynamics. Brian showed us a picture of Andrew. We got to understand how the local team here supported him, not only through Andrew's breast cancer, but also through his loneliness as well. And this is where he comes to chat and meet new people. People like able to join that Zoom, but he has been able to chat with us today, and hopefully he's going to join us in sessions as well. I know it's a bit of an ad hoc show and tell, but and a bit of a short, sharp one as well. But we're having actually getting to be in the communities. My laptop may die in 3 minutes, but we're going to work with it. And yeah, on the road. And does anyone have any questions? I mean, it's just sharing a little bit what we're up to in the community.
I have a question. How easy have you found it, I guess especially at the moment, but just generally in terms of like getting space in Tesco's and in other community kind of areas? Have people been quite open to you having stands there? Like, how have you gone about that?
I might hand that over to Cara, actually, who's on Erin's screen, to talk about how she's found booking spaces in Nelson.
Thanks, Carla. Hi, everyone. So we have found it quite difficult at times, but once we explain what we're trying to do and the aim of our work, people are very understanding and really want to help us make Nelson, Camborne and Neath a better place for everyone.
Nice, thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, Charlotte. It's great to see that things are starting to be possible again.
George.
Oh, sorry, George, you come off mute.
Fiona, but yeah,
sorry, George.
Oh, yeah. So my question, Charlotte's super exciting, and I guess I was lucky to get a bit of a sneak preview earlier, but it strikes me like there's some really, really important insights that you're getting, and there's a lot of complexity in that, and you're doing a great job of sort of helping us understand what's going on locally, and some of the nuance in a way that we can get our heads around. I guess, how do you see us moving forward in a way that is focused, just recognizing the interconnectedness of everything that you're looking at?
So I think that's what the priority sheets that I kind of attempted to show earlier is going to really support on, because it's going to help us understand exactly what we should be looking at and what's going to create the most impact, whilst also doing the same thing with our senior leadership to understand what's going to be in line with our strategy. We're kind of at that double diamond phase where we've learned a lot, and we've been synthesizing it down and down and down. And hopefully out the back of this week, we're going to have some really clear directions. And the interdependency maps that we will probably talk about in about 2 weeks' time on Show and Tells are, they're not necessarily something that we have to focus on all of, but they are, oh, you might get a live hula hoop session. Someone just started hula hooping in Tesco's. Got hula hooping going on. But what is, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So yeah, we're kind of honing down now, and those maps aren't supposed to be something that's kind of, we have to tackle the entire thing. It's more that we have to acknowledge when we're talking about one aspect, all the different parts that are interconnected into it, so that we can make sure we're actually solving the problem locally. Does that make sense? So it's kind of, what we're going to be doing is we'll have these sheets here, find out what's most common, then we're going to be going to ELT, we're going to ask them to help us prioritize out of 3 or 4 things, and that's going to be our direction moving forward into ideation. Sorry, I waffled a bit there.
That's great. Thank you, Charlotte. Does anyone have any more questions for Charlotte and Chloe in Camborne, or Cara and Erin in Nelson?
I just wanted to double check, which areas is it that you're focusing on? So it's Leith and then Camborne, and sorry, what was the third one? I was struggling to hear.
It's Neath, Nelson and Camborne. Sorry, normally I have on the slides, it's a mixture of live and slides. So I
Neath, Nelson,
so Neath in South Wales, so it's like near Swansea. Nelson is in Lancashire. It's kind of right by Burnley, and Camborne's in Cornwall, right at the bottom.
Okay, great. So quite a broad kind of geographic across the UK and Wales.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey for Erin and I to be driving from Neath to Nelson to Camborne, all in.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's a big road trip.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was great.
Cool. Well, it was great to kind of show you the inside of Camborne's Tesco's. And I probably going to jump off before my laptop logs me off instead. But thank you for listening.
Thank you, Charlotte. It'd be great to hear how you've got on when you're back in the virtual office next week. Okay, so we're going to hand over now to Joe and Leanne, who are going to talk about Stories user testing.
Thank you, Fiona. Just FYI, I'm having really bad Wi-Fi issues, so can I just check that everyone can hear me all right? Am I breaking up at all, or?
We can hear you. Do you want me to share, or do you want to share?
Okay, perfect. Leanne, could you just share the slides for me, and then I can. Sorry, could you share? Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, I think you might be potentially a little bit laggy.
Thank you. I heard you say something, but I think you said I might be a bit behind. So if you just share and I'll talk, and then that should be fine. Just give me a nudge if I break up at all. Okay, so you can make it full screen if you like. So I'll today be talking about our Stories user testing. A couple of weeks ago, I gave everyone a recap on Stories. So just another quick recap if you weren't there. Stories is our storytelling platform on the main website. You might be thinking of the Stories Hub, which is slightly different, but yeah, this platform on the main website. So what I'm going to be talking about today is our testing, what we were testing and why, the process I took to undertake this testing, our hypothesis, and then the key findings, and everything listed underneath the key findings is based on our hypothesis. So if you go to the next slide. Okay, so what were we testing and why? So as mentioned, Stories is our storytelling platform and had been live for a year. So we wanted to make sure that people understood the purpose of the platform and the functionality that was available to them. As a Stories team, we are a product team. We formed our hypothesis on what we thought could be improved, and in order to validate our ideas, we conducted some usability tests. So what we expected users to see versus what they were actually doing. Yeah, perfect. If you can go on to the next slide. Okay, so to undertake the user testing, there is external agencies that we have at the BRC who can, you can pass this sort of work onto them, and you can work with them to conduct the usability tests. But as a product team, we have a user experience manager who could help me with this, so we decided to conduct the tests ourselves. We recruited users through Medium, which is a blog space for work related. It's an external site which has all like product validation, and we have quite a following on Medium in the digital space, and we shared our testing on LinkedIn as well. The users were people who supported charities. So when seeking people, we wanted to make sure we were onboarding people who actually supported charities, who were interested in reading blogs and actually spent time reading content online. It didn't have to be related to our content, but to have some kind of relationship with online blogs or stories. The average age of our participants was 25 to 40-year-olds. And during this time, we recruited 8 participants. What we did in order to conduct the usability tests was create a prototype and a test script, which included scenarios around questions. We created tasks and activities relating to our hypothesis. Next slide, please. Okay, so our hypothesis was around six main areas of stories. So what was their expectation and understanding of stories, the overall navigation of the site, how were users landing on stories and how did they navigate through the space, the story content types. So as mentioned in my last update, we have a variety of content types. So that could be a story, a news article, an explainer, an experience. So did they actually understand what these content types were? Any actions that are available to users? Did they know what was available to them? And did they want any more action after reading a story? The actual content and interaction of the stories themselves, how did they engage with the content, how did they feel, and the overall page architecture. So do they engage with the page? Is it in a format and layout that they are happy with and that they understand? So next slide. Okay, so now I'll just talk about the key findings. There are quite a few, so I'll try and keep it at high level as possible. So the expectation and understanding, our hypothesis obviously was, do they understand what story's about? And all the users' expectations were met. Given the scenario that we set out and the tasks that we did, they had a very good understanding of the purpose of stories. One insight that we noticed that participants specifically expected to see news stories on the landing page. So this was a recommendation. We do offer news, but maybe it wasn't clear enough to them, so they couldn't exactly find news articles as easy as they had expected to. And next slide. And the navigation, how did they navigate around stories? So stories is broken down into 4 categories. It's migration and displacement, health and social, disasters and emergencies, and our movement. And as you can see in the image, we have where the main navigation bar where story sits, and there's a secondary navigation. So the secondary navigation was missed by almost all of our users, and they had to be prompted to find it. So we gave them a scenario to find a piece of content about the UK that related to a disaster and emergency, and they completely missed it. So that gave us some guidance that we would need to fix that navigation. It takes a while for the user to find the menu items, but it was safe to say that the categories themselves, so the disasters and emergencies, health and social, they did understand and had a relationship with. Next slide. So I mentioned the story content types, and we have a filter option within stories. This is basically on the secondary nav. If you were to click either UK or world in that previous example, you will then land on this page where you have the back catalogue of all the stories relating to that piece of content. Just as the filter option as it works now, almost all of the users didn't understand that it was a filter functionality, and that they expressed that they would have no need to actually use the filter because they would like to search for content. But overall, they were really confused by the content types and their meanings. So we have each piece of content is created in a way which relates to their content type, but this was not clear to any of the users. So basically a recommendation is that we need to rethink how we display content and what those content types are. But yeah, the filter functionality meant that not any of the users really understood about the functionality, and in any given case, when looking for a piece of content, they would either search using our search bar or in fact go back to Google or a search engine. And the next slide. Okay, so actions available to users. Did they know any actions that were available to them? So the most received piece of feedback is that there was not an action to take off the back of a story. They felt that any call to action, where I've mentioned CTA, was hidden within the copy. It was also expressed that there was no option given to the user to share content. So if they felt that they were really engaged with a piece of with a story specifically, they weren't able to share it with someone, they would have to copy the URL. CTA, sorry, means call to action. There was no related content component within stories. So once they read a story, there wasn't a natural next step for them to continue reading. So they weren't encouraged to explore, which doesn't really help with the purpose of stories, because we want to obviously share the importance of our work and the need for it. So yeah, our recommendation would obviously be to look at this and understand how we can engage with our users within the future, because we obviously want to keep those main actions available to them. And the next slide, please. So the overall page architecture, so that's the layout and the look and feel of the stories pages. 6 out of the 8 users reported that they were unable to distinguish the order of content on our main storytelling hub. So that's the main page where we feature all of our best and most relevant content of the time. So they didn't understand what the content layout was about. So they were confused and didn't really know why the content was displayed in such a way. The main observation during that session was that the stories page layouts had issues, and some users found them not very helpful, with one user expressing that there were large gaps between copies. So they basically picked up on a few of the bugs that our website has, and they were able to call that out and said that they didn't quite like that interaction or the user interface of it. So that is definitely something that we have to look at going forward. And is there another last recommendation? Yes. So content and interaction. Of the content that we display to them, how engaged are they with the content? During our testing, there was this image of a doctor by day who was also an emergency volunteer by night, and specifically just because of his lovely smiling face, all the users mentioned were able to call him out, which wasn't actually part of the test, but it was a nice added bonus that they said just by seeing a human smiling face, it made them feel really positive, and therefore they were more engaged with that piece of content and wanted to read more. So that definitely gave us insight to use more positive imagery. I know a lot of the imagery related to our content can be a bit distressing or sad at times, so that positive news story or that positive story really stood out to them. So that was definitely something for us to understand, and when we're creating content going forward. Cool. And last but not least, this was something separate. Because there was no formalized actions for users to take, we wanted to understand, after reading a story, how did people feel, so that we were able to create content for them or give them maybe a call to action off the back of a story. So if they read a story about a volunteer and they wanted to volunteer, that we should be able to offer them that call to action. So if you click, Leanne, you'll be able to see some stats coming through. So yeah, we simply asked on Hotjar above a story, how did you feel after reading this story? 44% of our users said that they would want to volunteer off the back of a story. 42% would actually want to seek help, so they would want to get in touch and find out how the Red Cross can help them. 9% of the readers said that they simply felt inspired by the content, which was really nice, and that's part of the whole awareness piece. And another 5% said that after reading something that they would actually want to donate. So that does give us some really good insights as to what users are likely to do. And as you can see, people really want to either get involved or seek help. So that is definitely like a really important factor going forward when we create content, because we know what they look for. So what's next? We have now formed a lot of new hypotheses and recommendations that we'd like to user test again, and then specifically develop into our stories platform. So what we'll do now is redesign some of the components and some of the web pages to facilitate these recommendations. They'll go through another round of user testing, and then hopefully we can get on to development in our platform space. So sorry I rushed through that quite quickly, but I hope you all got an insight into what our user testing entails. So any other questions, like, always happy to answer, or if you want to ping me directly on how I did the user testing, I have some pros and cons of what happened when I did it as well. So yeah, any questions, welcome.
That was really interesting. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Leanne. I was just wondering about, do you know how the future might look in terms of, will the main call to actions be around routing people to like the volunteer recruitment pages, or will it be more around fundraising, or will it be a bit of both?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're going to test is basically a component that does all three. So depending on the stories, if it can be personalized to the piece of content. I've given it a really funny name of an inspiration widget, but what it is and what it does is very high level at the minute, but it should give the option for the user to either be pointed to a volunteer journey, if it's about loneliness or whatever the content is related to, then we'll be able to point you in the direction to someone who you could who could specifically help you with. On the story space, we have like a donation call to action. So it would be a standalone component that would coincide with the piece of content, but how that looks and how it works is just an idea at the minute. But yeah, definitely trying to find ways to make that more visible for the user. There are call to actions, as I mentioned, embedded in the copy. It's sometimes just skim reading a story, knowing what you want to get to, and it being there. So it's definitely something that we want to look into.
That's great. Thanks, Joe. We've got 1 minute left. I can see there's 2 questions in the chat. One around how varied the group of testers were in terms of their background or digital experience, and one to build on that first question around the motivations of testers, and how does that skew the response?
Yes. So this is probably one of the biggest problems that I faced when recruiting users, because we, like I mentioned, recruited them through Medium and LinkedIn. So they weren't exactly our supporter space. They were like a new user to the BRC, but they had obviously experience and shared the similar interests that we were looking for. I've actually looped in I think it's with supporter engagement, who have some supporter users in there that we can get in contact with. So it was quite varied doing the tests, and like I said, we did it ourselves, so we were recruiting people ourselves, but definitely a lesson learned for the next round of testing.
That's great. Thank you very much, Joe and Leanne. Really interesting. Okay, so on to our last show and tell for today. So we've got Paul from the GIS and Information Management team. He's going to talk about how we've built information management capacity within the Nigeria Red Cross for part of their flood preparedness work as part of the new disaster management program. Over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Fiona. Let me just share my screen. Hi everyone, I'm Paul. I work in the GIS and Information Management team. GIS standing for Geographic Information Systems. And I'm going to talk to you today a little bit around the support that we're providing to the Western Central Africa team in our International Directorate. And specifically a program that is just starting in Nigeria. and it's about disaster management. So who are the GIS and IM team? Basically, we support and advise different areas of the British Red Cross operations with geographic data, as well as information management needs for humanitarian response. And you can kind of see a couple of examples here. If you really want to know more about what we do, there's a Redrum page, as well as we have some videos on stream. So just to introduce Nigeria as a whole. So Nigeria is located in Western Africa. And we've had a country office there since 2018. However, Nigeria did used to be a British Red Cross overseas branch up until 1961, until they gained kind of independence. The British Red Cross are starting and implementing a new disaster management program, and this is in 3 states within Nigeria. One near Abuja, the capital, and quite urban, semi-urban area, one in Lagos, and another area being that of more rural location. You can see in the map on the bottom right the communities that we're working in and where they're located. So just to provide you with a brief introduction to the Nigeria program, what is it and why? So the Nigeria program is a program which is starting this year and is, I think, 3 to 4 years in length. And this program was really born out of 2 flood responses that happened in 2018 and 2019, where there was a need that the response of the National Society was slightly slower and less impactful than it could have been. And this was really linked to kind of assessments and needs assessments, and when there's an emergency, what are the needs of the community, and really responding within the first week or up to 72 hours to really understand what are the needs of the community, how can we best support them. And we supported, the GIS and IM team actually supported bilaterally to the Nigeria Red Cross in 2018 and 2019. So we already had that little relationship and that knowledge around what we were going to improve. But here I put the overall impact of the program is that vulnerable individual and communities are more resilient and experience reduced impact on health and economic status from hazards. So this could be floods, or it could be other types of disasters. And there are two outcomes really. Firstly is a technical focus. DRR stands for disaster risk reduction. The first one is a technical focus, so that communities really know how to prepare and respond and recover from disasters. And the second is really around preparedness and response. So basically that within a set period of an emergency, the Nigeria Red Cross can deploy people, collect data, and understand what the needs of the community are, and also how to make decisions based on that. So from that, the aim specifically for the GIS and information management team is to really strengthen that information management capacity of the Nigeria Red Cross Society to enable them to respond and manage emergencies by really conducting more effective needs assessments and ultimately take the best decisions based on that data that they're collecting. So rather than asking a community which has been flooded, asking them 500 questions and kind of understanding everything about that community, but what data do we want to get, and what questions do we want to ask, and what questions do we want to answer, so that we can essentially only collect what we want to know, so that then we're not labored by a wealth of data that might not be used. And the way that we're going to do this within the GIS and IM team is something, or is centered around something called the Data Readiness Framework. And this is a brand new framework that was created by the American Red Cross and IFRC late last year. And it focuses around 3 components, all of which level up each other. So the first being data literacy, to then being data prepared, and then being data ready. So how are we going to essentially apply this to the Nigeria Red Cross? And the first step is data literacy. And data literacy is that national societies such as the Nigeria Red Cross have the skills and knowledge and attitudes and structures really to use data. So if I ask someone, what is data? What does data mean to them? Like, how would they view data? Is it interesting? Is it like just those questions, that socialization of data? And we're essentially working through kind of methods like using missing maps and getting individuals to really trace around satellite imagery to understand that building that is on a map or that road that's on a map is a data point, and just kind of slowly socialize that. The IFRC also have other methods such as the data playbook, which has kind of exercises and games, workshops, which can also be used. The second step is data preparedness. And this is where national societies have the ability to effectively use and manage data-related tools and methodologies. And here, I've realized on this slide that there were too many acronyms, but in the middle, Kobo Toolbox is something like a mobile data collection method. So it's like a survey on your phone. So by doing surveys digitally and on the phone, you can essentially upload data directly to the server, and then it can be immediately used. And it can be questioned. It's like, are we asking this question in the correct way possible? Are we not? Also in this section, it's around survey design. How do we ask questions, and how do we know our biases? Do we ask questions in a certain way which ultimately delivers a certain response? And how can we essentially fix that so it's very neutral? And then lastly, it's data readiness. And this is where national societies are ready to use data and able to use data for decision making and integrate it really into the design of a response. So here we're focusing around, once all that data is being collected, how do we present it back in a certain way to a certain audience? So if leadership are going to essentially decide this is a response we're taking, how can they be most informed? Is this through dashboards or other ways? Or it could be through maps. So it's about really building the capacity of the national society in each of these 3 components, but ultimately leveling up each time. So data literacy, you might want to, you would need a kind of large spread. So you had to have, say, lots of volunteers and staff members really understanding what data literacy is. But when you get to data readiness, you're looking at a smaller group of people who can deliver products and who also can understand them. So yeah, so this is a program which started at the beginning of this year. Currently we're very much on this first 2-step journey of data literacy and preparedness, building up the capacity of the national society to really get that base knowledge. Today, actually, just before this show and tell, there was a Missing Maps Mapathon where the Nigeria Red Cross volunteers, as well as also people from the international department, started to trace around the communities, trace around satellite imagery of the communities that we're working in, to really start to create this first map. And this first map essentially showing where people live and the fact that they have needs there, and that they should be on a map and they should be known to be there. Yeah, so that's where we're at. Thanks. I mean, if there are any questions, I'm free to answer them. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. I've just put some of the acronyms in the chat there, because I know we're awful for acronyms. Even our team name has an acronym within it. GIS is an acronym in itself. So just to help some people there, I've just popped a few of them in the chat. Yeah, does anyone have any questions about the program, or even about the mapathon that we did just an hour ago, actually, with the Nigeria team? No. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. Really great to have so many people here today. There will be another show and tell, same time, same place next week. Thank you.